Okay. Hey, everybody. It is Phyllis here, and I am with Sam, and
Hello.
we are doing another live stream today. It's been a little while, right?
Quite a while.
Yes, but if you were on social media at all today, you'll have seen that uh, Disney Plus was participating in the Winter TCA 2021 press tour event. And we got a lot of info from Kevin Feige about plans from Disney Plus, from Marvel Studios. And there were a lot of questions asked about Marvel TV and everything there. So we figured, there's a lot of stuff to kind of break down and decode. And we would do that for you guys today. Um, so yeah, I guess to start out, if anyone is unclear about what the TCA event is, this is like I think it's a biannual event that's held by the Television Critics Association. And so, given the fact that we're still in a pandemic, all these events have been virtual. So there's nothing that we as people at home in the public usually see. All of this is like the press, the critics, they will go to different presentations with different networks. The networks will basically present the shows that are coming up in the upcoming season. So that's why today online you heard a lot of news about like, oh, here are all the release dates for all of these Disney Plus shows. So we got like a release date for Loki, and we got a release date for all this other content. And so this is usually a chance as well for critics to ask questions of network executives and all that. So that's why we had a kind of all this Q&A with Kevin Feige and these great answers to start to decipher.
Yeah, there's so much content today.
Mm-hmm. So I guess
So,
the big thing that people probably heard is that somebody asked him a question about um, the old Marvel TV shows versus the new ones. So I think I don't quite know exactly what the phrasing of the original question was, but it was something about like, the success of the new shows versus the old shows, implying that the old shows were not successful. And, he kind of like shot that down.
yeah, he specifically said that the fans will disagree with the question about success because there's a big fandom for Agents of Shield, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and Luke Cage. He was like, "Oh yeah, they wouldn't agree with that take,"
Hmm.
which it was great to hear him one recognizing the fandoms for those shows and two recognizing the success of those shows. Like I know like the Netflix shows and Agents of Shield get a lot of heat, like all the Marvel TV shows in general, for not being part of the bigger MCU. So I'm sure like for a lot of people, just hearing him recognize that is like a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. That was a big thing. And, just if you were on Twitter, I think a lot of different Marvel things trended, but Daredevil definitely trended too. I think it was at like almost 8,000 tweets when I did see it on my sidebar. So, I think there is this like if Kevin Feige will like talks about Daredevil or mentions like other Defender shows, people online will talk about Daredevil and they will get it a trend.
Yeah, he also there's another one. Let me grab the because he also they asked him about the possibility of these TV shows coming back
Mm-hmm. Yep.
specifically, and his answer was like very interesting as usual, and
Yes.
very him as usual too. So
Yeah.
he was saying, I think we probably could do it. I think a lot of that stuff comes back to us. There's always rumors online about things reverting. Sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not. But I'm not exactly sure of what the exact contracts are, but perhaps someday. So yeah, always as enigmatic as always.
Very, very enigmatic. Like we've said before on various minisodes and podcasts, Kevin Feige is sort of the king of the answer that is the non-answer.
Yep.
And so, but again, the fact that the question was asked, and that's a It's a fairly it's a fairly straightforward answer for Kevin Feige though. Like he actually says like I think we could probably do it. You know, he hedges a bit on the contracts, which is interesting because my take is that, you know, Kevin Feige is Marvel, like he knows all, you know, so I think he knows exactly what he can and cannot do. And I think that he does have to probably there's just stuff that they're not going to tell us right now, you know. So there's going to be a difference between what he knows as the president of Marvel Studios and the CCO of Marvel, and what he decides he's ready to tell, or what the company or what the company decides they're ready to tell us, the public facing, you know, uh,
Yeah, like
market,
he's
right?
just
So
keeping hush hush on all the
yeah,
details and all that stuff.
yeah,
I have a little different take on it, but I mean,
hmm
not that I disagree with what you said, but I also like Finn. Like it could be something um, easier. That is just last time we heard about like Permuter,
hmm
he was having control of licensing video games and events of Marvel.
hmm
So there's still some control that I has, and part of
right,
it is
right,
licensing. So Phage's plate is pretty full right now, and
hmm
he has a lot of stuff. So maybe he's just not concentrated on the Netflix contracts and the Netflix shows. Like he's like, yeah, maybe he knows the general idea of them, but he doesn't know all the details and stuff, especially because it's not under him. It's not
hmm
something that he, created.
hmm
Like
right, right,
he didn't write these contracts. He wasn't involved in them.
right,
So maybe he was just saying that they're like, okay, yeah, that's not something I'm thinking about right now. Not that he couldn't
yeah,
find about that, and like not that he didn't have a plan with those shows later on.
hmm
Just maybe it's not on the
right,
top of his head, and maybe
right.
it's not a priority.
Yeah, and I guess he actually does address that in that same, it must have been a question, like, right after that, where he talks in this particular quote, he says, "My history at Marvel is vast and involved zero control for a long time, so I paid more attention to the things I gained control over than the things I didn't have control over."
Yep.
So, I think, you know, in a way that would track. I can see him, you know, maybe knowing the general strokes of it
Yep.
all, but not necessarily needing to know the nitty-gritty details unless he wanted to do something about that. Now that being said, those shows are back under the Marvel banner officially, or
Well,
those
not
those
the
character
shows,
rights.
the
Sorry,
characters,
my bad.
because the
The
shows are
character rights.
still with Netflix
Yes,
for a while.
the distribution rights are still with Netflix, but the character rights are back with Marvel. So on that note, at least, if Kevin Feige had a plan at all to use any of them, he would probably know what the particulars are, at least for that.
Yeah, and there's
Um,
another thing about like the Netflix shows are still with Netflix, and we assume they are going to be with Netflix for a while still, because last time we talked about it, we are assuming we are like probably in the sixth year of them, maybe, or
mhm,
something around that. Like hopefully we are past the halfway mark, but that's still a couple of years to go. And let's say they
yeah,
wanted to make a direct continuation of the shows, there's still years for him to like let it run, like before he has
exactly.
to worry about these contracts.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Um, I guess another thing that was interesting that came out of the conversation today, during the press tour, I don't have the specific context for it, but, you know, they obviously did talk about the current slate of shows that they have with WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Hmm.
and Loki, and all the shows that are kind of later on in the pipeline. Um, I don't have the specific quote in front of me, you know, but he does talk about how um, they are excited to take chances and to take risks and to go places that they haven't gone before. Um, and so, you know, I guess I'm bringing that up because I am hoping that with that mindset and that approach, that once we sort of see this first phase of television kind of, you know, in the rearview mirror for Marvel, we can start getting a better idea of how Daredevil could plug back into that world, especially in the form of a TV show. Um, but I guess before we lose too much track of the conversation. There is another important thing that we did want to bring up, and that is Feige's comments on Deadpool and R-rated content in the MCU.
I think this is like probably the most important part of today
Mm-hmm.
because this is one like probably affects the campaign the most at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So let me bring the exact quote. They were asking him question about like branching beyond the PG-13 rating and doing more adult-rated stuff, and he said, "I think we target everything we're doing for kids and adults. So I think your question is more adult or R-rated. Other than Deadpool, which has already established itself as a certain genre and a certain rating that we already said we will not mess with when we started working on Deadpool, which we have. Other than that, we haven't encountered a story or a storyline or a character's journey that a PG-13 or the tone or the ratings we have been using up to this point has prevented us. We have been held back by if we are, then certainly there can be a discussion that can be had now that there's another outlet like Star, but that just hasn't been the case. So there's so much to unpack on this.
There is a lot to unpack. So I know, again, on Twitter, a lot of fans were pretty upset at the implication that like a movie like Blade wouldn't be R-rated, right?
Hmm.
Um, I thought it was interesting to see. I mean, I guess I had already noticed that fans were kind of really hoping that Blade would be R, as well as like maybe Moon Knight could be R. But I think the display from the fans today really reflects that there is a desire within the greater MCU fandom as well to see a larger variety of ratings for MCU content. You know, I think there is this maybe like assumption that just because you're an MCU fan and everything up until this point has been like PG-13, that people are like happy with just like PG-13 and under, you know? But I don't think that's the case. I think, you know, we were lucky enough to have the Marvel Netflix universe before this, you know, to kind of fulfill our mature rated programming needs, you know. But now that we don't have that outlet anymore, now that Marvel Studios is sort of taking control of all of the outlets that they can, you know, kind of put their content into, you know, I feel like it would be sort of short-sighted to not really consider the potential for that. And I think when Kevin Feige says stuff like, um, up until this point, or, you know, it works with what we have right now. I don't know. I guess it could be me reading into it, but I think he always sort of tries to, he doesn't ever lie, I don't think, but he does try to like, you know,
He's vague. He
oh,
tries to
be
give it
vague.
like, yeah,
He tries to give himself room. So when he says that, you know, they haven't had the conversations yet as of this moment, what does that mean for like next week, next month, next year, you know?
1 year
I
from
don't know,
now, 2 years from now,
right?
you know, it doesn't mean like it can't happen. It just like it
Right.
hasn't happened. And
Mhm.
I said like there's something interesting about this quote because we know from a Goddard interview that we have talked about
Mhm.
before in this
Mm,
mini
right.
podcast that Daredevil was originally thought as a movie. So they were
Mhm.
like discussing with Marvel back then, I think in
Mhm.
2014, something around that time, to do a movie, but
Mhm.
because of what Marvel Studio was doing at that time, which is, you know, like these flashy movies with a lot of CGI and like big
Mhm.
budgets and everything, Godard decides that it doesn't quite fit what they are doing. And like they do say that it fits better as a TVMA show with a darker tone.
Mhm.
So saying that like they haven't encountered any character that like the PG-13 like doesn't hold them from might not be quite accurate because they had Marvel TV doing
Mhm.
those stories. So yeah, Marvel Studio didn't have to worry about the characters that like those stories didn't fit their tone and like rating because Marvel TV was handling them. But
Yeah.
there's no Marvel TV right now. And I
Yeah.
think that he knows because of what he says. Like when he specifically mentions a star and like he's
Mm-hmm.
open to discussion. I think he knows that it could be very well that in a near future or distant future or whatever, that they get that responsibility to also tackle the more mature, darker tones that Marvel TV was doing because there's no Marvel TV right now.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I just keep thinking if the conversation hasn't happened yet, I think it will happen
Yeah.
eventually. Um,
Another
yeah.
another thing that like I know a lot of people always say that it can work. Like, oh, but you can have a Disney Plus TV 14 Daredevil.
Hmm.
Like it can work. Like we just have to reduce the blood. Maybe we
Hmm.
don't do this or we don't do that. I'm sure
Right.
you have seen that argument
Yep. Hmm.
everywhere,
Yeah.
and I
You
think
can do
this
the
is
same
true.
step, but just take out all the blood. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually agree. This is true. Like, I think a TV 14 show could work for Daredevil. But the thing with this is what he says at the beginning. Uh, and it's like, I think we target everything we are doing for kids and adults.
Mm-hmm.
So the target audience is sometimes even more important, or like not sometimes, it is more important than the TV rating or the rating of the movie, because it actually is what tells you what kind of stories they are going to tell or they want to tell. Because we have
Hmm.
like shows like Law and Order, which is a TV 14
Hmm.
show, but it's very much an adult-oriented show, right?
Right. Right. Hmm.
So who you're targeting, who you're doing this show for, is as important as the TV rating you're doing it.
Hmm.
Uh, like so, a TV show for Disney Plus will always have to have like the kids in mind because
Right.
that's the target audience for that platform. So
Hmm.
even if you could just take away the blood and everything, my worry is that it won't be as deep, or
Hmm.
just just like I don't know how to say this, like the storytelling will be different from the
Right.
Netflix shows because you have this audience that you need to make sure is finding it entertaining,
Hmm.
that you didn't have to have that audience in mind when you were doing the Netflix shows. And that's
Hmm.
why like if they said like, oh, we're doing a TV 14 Hulu show, I will be
Right.
like, yeah, that's okay because the target audience for Hulu is a more mature audience. It's different.
Exactly. Yeah. The audience is more mature. Hulu takes different types of risks with
Yes.
their storytelling. And it's not that Disney Plus can't tell good stories. I think we all know Disney to be a brand that values storytelling
Yeah.
a lot. And even with, the shows that they have had with, everyone is currently super into WandaVision, as are
Yeah.
many of us
We love
on our
it.
team. We talk about it every week. It's a lot of fun. But as far as the depth of the storytelling, I know what I am getting out of a Marvel Studios Disney Plus TV show. I think there's a lot of really cool visuals and a lot of like really fun Easter eggs, especially for people that are like big comics fans. And there's a lot of little clues and things that kind of knit together and try to figure out how does it fit into the greater MCU. But am I getting like all the depth of the characters? Am I getting into like the motivations? I don't know if I'm getting all of that. I don't know if a story about grief on Disney Plus and WandaVision is the same story on grief that you would have gotten from like a Jessica Jones. It's just different. And so I totally understand what you're saying about like how they're telling uh, a TV 14 rated story for a Disney Plus audience is going to be very different from how they tell a TV 14 rated story to a Netflix audience or a Hulu audience. There's just more restrictions in that Disney Plus space. Now, you did mention though Star, and I think it was kind of key that Feige mentioned Star.
Hmm.
And to me, I think so for people that are in the UK, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. You guys got Star rolled out as part of your Disney Plus app. I think earlier this week, maybe even yesterday. Um, and I honestly think that first move is a good sign to me that there is gonna have to be a commitment to mature rated content, um, from, like, the companies that are in the Disney Plus app, because otherwise, why even bother having Star integrated into the Disney Plus app and add all these parental controls? And also, they've started announcing that they're gonna be doing Star Originals, which are gonna be focused on global audiences for the time being. I think a lot of Hulu stuff will be imported into Star.
Hmm.
Um, but that content is being created. So that mature content is being created on Hulu and on Star, and will be in that Star tab within the Disney Plus app. So they're already having to reckon with like the the having the brands live together in the
Yep.
same space. So again, just because it hasn't been a conversation point yet, because they haven't had to worry about it yet, doesn't mean it won't be.
And there's something that I said when we first heard the quote, and he's like, well,
Mhm.
he says like Deadpool came to them as R-rated, and it came with a
Mhm.
tone. Well,
Right.
so did the Netflix shows. Like
Right.
now we know like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage. We know them as like how they are, and they have a
Right.
rating and they have a tone that is very different from the MCU. And like
Mhm.
Disney said when they got Fox, if it works, you don't have to break
Mhm.
it.
Right. Absolutely. And we our campaign exists to to see the show revive, to see that same cast come back, to see as much as the creative team come back, and to see that same rating. Now, what's going to happen, we don't know, right? But
Hmm.
it's just that, like, it already comes with a lot of good stuff, and I don't think Feige um, is ignorant of that. And I think there is also a reason why we keep hearing all these rumors about Daredevil and about Matt.
Yeah.
And, I just think that, even if they don't have plans yet, um, I can't imagine they aren't already trying to figure out how to bring some iteration of the Daredevil we know. Because, again, if all the Charlie Cox stuff checks out and ends up being true, the only reason why you would bring Charlie Cox back, and we've had this conversation before, the only reason why you'd bring Charlie Cox back as Daredevil is because Charlie Cox is Daredevil. There's something in him that we want to see continue in the MCU. So that means that tone of his Matt Murdock and the tone of his Daredevil, is it going to have to maybe take a little bit of massaging to work inside what the MCU is now? Yeah, probably. That was the expectation. Um, but like you said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We're maybe gonna have to see more sides of him, just because there's gonna be different tones that he's gonna have to contend with, if he does end up in, more Marvel Studios projects. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is actually pretty much everything that we had to go over today.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, ultimately, we always love hearing Feige bring up Daredevil. We love hearing Feige bring up Marvel TV.
We
We love that the press keeps asking, so we thank them for kind of helping us out in that
we also
regard.
love that we trend every time there's a Feige interview.
Absolutely, we love it. And when we saw that happening, we saw all the quotes. We're like, okay, well, we're going to probably have to go onto YouTube tonight and do a live stream. Um, but yeah, again, all we can do right now is speculate and just share our opinions on what we think makes the most sense, but ultimately, Disney is a company that's out to make money. Obviously, they
Hmm.
also incidentally create a lot of really cool movies and shows for us to enjoy as fans, and we consume all their content, and we certainly do that with Marvel, but they want to make money. And so, you know, there's a lot of these questions in the air about mature content and how they can expand. And we just, I just think at least that, for this to be a profitable long-term plan, getting into streaming, getting
I think we have an audio problem. Phyllis? Oh, I think her mic might have disconnected or something. Um, Sorry about that. But like she was saying, um, we think that for the streaming to work for Disney in the long term, they need to have mature content. They need it if they want to compete with HBO, if they want to compete with Netflix, especially like in places that are very price sensitive. So they will eventually have to have this conversation, especially with their big studios. And our mission remains the same. We want to see the show come back, and we want to see it hopefully with a TVMA rating. So what we can do is continue fighting, is continue driving the mission of yes, we want Daredevil back, and we want a show, and we want it to be mature rated if possible. Um, but yes, that is pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any comments and any more questions, or if you want us to handle another topic, leave a comment, and we'll see you in another episode. Thank you, everyone.